morning, everybody. I'm delighted to see all of you. We are talking about building resilience, which is one of the keys to having the most incredible life. And I am going to unshare in just a moment. And I'm going to encourage each and every one of you to turn on your video, even if it's just for 10 seconds, so that we can see each other, because it is so refreshing to get to see one another's faces and connect. And at the same time, if you don't mind turning on your camera and unmuting just for 5 seconds, let's all say hi, good morning, give well wishes, whatever, to this whole group on top of each other in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, good morning.
Oh, this is delightful. Look at seeing everybody. Oh, wonderful. You can turn them off if you want to, but I really would love for you to keep them on. Would you put into the chat 2 words to get us started? Will you put 2 words? How are you doing today? Any words are okay, whether it's extremely wonderful, whether it's extremely terrible, or anything in between. We want to know how you're showing up today. Whatever comes to your mind, just put it in quick like that. And oh, I love seeing all these. Just be real, because one thing I want us to talk about is, as we're talking about resilience, we're really going to do real talk fast. You know how sometimes we have pretenses? How are you? Oh, I'm perfect. Oh, how are you? Oh, I'm perfect too. Look at this perfect world. That is not where we're going today. We're getting real. And I know if you're on this call today that you're ready and willing to do that. So take a look how everybody else is doing. There's from energized to tired and everywhere in between. I'm going to encourage everybody to pause and put words in there so that you can actually tune in and then get turned on to how you want to be. First, it's how we show up, and then we get to set our intention. So as we are moving forward, you're gonna walk away from these 45 minutes with 10 tips, 10 strategies that are practical, because I know that's what this is about, in terms of building your resilience or continuing your resilience. So I am delighted to be here with you. I'm gonna, from time to time, share my screen, unshare my screen, because I think it can be nice to see other people, us to see each other, but then also nice to see the slides. So real quick, just so you know who I am, I'm in Flagstaff. I'm a leadership coach. I do training, strategic planning. I run a women's summit. I have an online academy. I'll tell you about that academy in the end. If you're like, I need support now, we can talk about how you can continue to do that. That's some of my background. I have the pleasure in supporting people to live their best lives. And I feel honored to be here with all of you today. So as we were talking about resilience, now that you got your fingers working in the chat, will you put something else into the chat? Would you give a synonym to resilience or a definition? What does resilience mean to you? It's a buzzword, and we don't want it to be empty. Great, we've got strength or consistency. Oh, pivot, which is probably the most beautiful word that has come out of the pandemic, right? Bouncing back, that ability, weathering the storms. These are incredible. Keep thinking. I'm also going to encourage you to take copious notes during this, because we all know that we remember better, we synthesize better, and we apply better when we take notes. So whatever you're putting in the chat, I encourage you to also keep it in your notes that you'll take away with you. I want to tell you a quick story. My background, at one point, I was a career services director at a small college, and I would get the students, the graduates, when they were what's the expression? Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And they were so excited to start their careers. And so I knew, though, it was one of the most gregarious experiences with resiliency that anyone ever has. For those of you, raise either your physical hand or your little emoji hand if you have ever been job searching and it's been hard. Many of us have had that experience, right? Because what we know is that you go out there and you say, I'm incredible and hire me, and then they don't. I'm incredible, hire me, and then they don't. And you have to pick yourself up from your bootstraps every time to go in with your best self every time. And it is painful. And so I remember saying to those students, this is one of the hardest things you're going to do, but you are going to make it. If you keep going, you're going to land a job. So stick with it. Other things that people are saying about resilience, it's strategic, consistent approach. I love that, Laura and Kathleen. Or they want you, but they aren't willing to pay you. That's right. So it might not be a perfect fit. So I'm going to ask everybody, this is going to be funny. I'm going to ask for you to stand up with me for a moment. Where I'm doing this with you. We're going to stand up and I'm going to ask you to read this out loud with me. Okay, now you can't see my head, but that's okay. Ready? We're going to read this together. Your beliefs starting over. Your beliefs become your thoughts. Your thoughts become your words. Your words become your actions. Your actions become your habits. Your habits become your values. And your values become your destiny. Okay, that's kind of like our Pledge of Allegiance. Screenshot this if you want. You know who said this. This is Gandhi. And it's powerful because what this is telling us is that how we think really matters. It is not just about the external, what happens to us. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to share in the chat, if you don't mind, what's one of the times you've needed to be the most resilient? What's happened in your life? Remember, I said we're doing real talk and we're getting quickly into it. So I want us to think for a moment about flipping the script. So now, if you don't mind, would you put into the chat, what's one of the times you've had to be the most resilient? What's been hard for you that you've had to overcome? Or maybe you're saying, I have not yet overcome it, but it's hard. Let's be real with each other. If we're going with the idea of job seekers, we know that only 13%, or do you know that only 13% of applicants get the interview? Think about that. That's a very low number. And then only 2% of the folks who get the interview get the job. So it is hard. It's hard. And we need to continue to bounce back. What we say to ourselves in the moment of rejection matters. What we say to ourselves after we've tried one time and we know we're going to have to try again matters. Great. Keep them coming. Here we've got being financially responsible for a family of 4 when my husband was in school full time and running my own business and then COVID hitting. Dang. That's a lot, right? And another one, the uncertainty when I was out of work on leave of absence post-surgery. Absolutely. And oh my gosh, said so well, the season of loss in 2020. So let's not underestimate how important and how grave those things are. But what we say to ourselves really matters. So let's continue on. I want us to look at this for a minute. I want you to think of a name, like a real concrete person, either on this call that you know, or anyone in your life that you would consider successful, and put their name in the chat. Don't overthink it. Whatever comes to you quickly, just write their name. We probably won't know them, and that's fine. Great, keep them coming. Excellent, keep them coming. There's a real importance in thinking of the person. So as the names keep coming in, I want you to think about what identifies somebody as successful in your mind. We all have a different definition of success. And I love the variety from people really close in our lives to Oprah. And so now, whatever name you put a word that represents them. What makes them successful? If you've heard of Angela Duckworth before, some of you have, she has written a book about grit and perseverance. And she's asked this question exactly. And what she, oh, look, we both said grit right there. What she has found is the answer to the question. So meaning who is successful in life in general. She's asked these questions. Which cadets would drop out? She's asked the question of which spelling bee participants would advance. She's asked the question, which teachers will still be here at the end of the year? Which teachers will be the most effective? I'm married to a teacher who's doing all online school teaching right now. And I want to say the resilience needed for the teachers right now, I bow down to all of you. Which salespeople will keep their jobs and not burn out or give up? Which salespeople will make the most money? So of these, she was saying, what is the best predictor of success? And a couple of things that you said, was it grit? Was it juggling? What other qualities are you seeing that make for success? Sometimes we say like, okay, is it good looks? Is it social intelligence? Is it socioeconomic status? Is it IQ? When you think about also the people on your team, the ones that are successful, what are their qualities? And you might have different teams. You might have a work team. You might have a community team. You might have a family team. Well, what she has found is that it is these two things. I'm going to encourage you to write these down, put these Post-it notes all over your office, your bedroom, or your bathroom, or your rear view mirror. Passion and perseverance. How am I doing with passion and perseverance in any given moment? Now, probably the number one thing to resilience is stop the self-judgment. Is anyone really good at self-judging? And like, I'm really good at criticizing myself. I'm my harshest critic. So we're just evaluating. We're just noticing. So I'm going to unshare for a moment so we can see each other better. So about 2 years ago or so, I created a goal, right? From time to time, we create goals, and that seems like a good idea. I had this goal of being able to do 1 pull-up, right? It was really concrete. Thank you for that, Kathleen. I see that, right? Like 1 pull-up, that's all I want to be able to do. So I started working with a personal trainer, and I loved him, and I was getting stronger, and it was super great. And then all of a sudden, for a couple of weeks in a row, I'd meet with him once a week. It felt like I was going backwards. And I would have pain, and it was frustrating. And one day my trainer looked at me. Now, we don't have the most emotional relationship with each other, but I remember it was such a precious moment. He looked at me and said, "Julie, your eyes look wet." And I was like, okay, he's noticing what's going on for me right now. And he said, "Are you in pain or is it emotional?" And I was like, "It's emotional." He said, "What's going on?" So I gushed. I started telling him, "I feel so frustrated. I felt like I was doing so well, and now I feel like I'm going backwards, and it's really hard." And he gave me the talk. And this is the talk I want each of you to give to yourselves. I want you to give to the important people in your lives. The talk went like this: "Julie, what? You think it's just everything's going to be easy? Everything in your life has been easy up until this point?" And I was like, "No." And he said, "I have seen you do hard things. This is just one obstacle. You're going to get through this. You're going to get beyond this, but it takes you believing in yourself. Do you believe in yourself?" And I was like, "Yes." "And have you overcome hard things before?" And I was like, "Yes." And so we kept going, and we kept going, and we kept going. And I got to the place where I was able to do 21 pull-ups. Okay. It would be 3 in a row and then a lap around the track, 3 in a row and a lap around the track. I share that with you just to say, here's a very concrete example of overcoming an obstacle. I know that you have other kinds of obstacles, but we all have these kinds of challenges. So I'm going to put it back to sharing the screen. I'm also going to ask that each of us right in this moment do something. When we're thinking about passion and perseverance, I'm also going to ask you to arrive, meaning be present here, be present now. You've heard the expression before of the radical presence. Can we be really clear and settle into our moment? Not worrying about the future, not being concerned about the past. If we want to think about resilience, what's going on right now? And I know for me, there is no other place that I'd rather be in the world than with you here right now in this moment. And when I remember that, I am overwhelmed with a feeling of gratitude, peace, and happiness. And those things that worry me, okay, the things that worry me, does anyone else have kids right now? Does anyone else also have a teenager? Does anyone else also have a teenager that got their license that just got in an accident 5 days ago because of the snow, right? All the stuff. But sometimes those things wake me up at night, but when I stop and say, what's going on right now? What's going on right now? It's okay. Everything is okay right in this moment. I don't want us to underestimate this strategy of coming back to the present moment. Will you raise your hand, your physical or your emoji hand, if you ever feel the B word these days? And what I mean by that is busy. Does anyone feel busy these days? Kara, yes. Excellent. So it's a common thing in our workplace. It's a common thing in our lives. It's a common thing in our culture. So I'm going to ask you, how can you think about what else are you? Because what we know is what we focus on expands, right? Our thoughts become our destiny. Gandhi's wise, right? So I want you to put in the chat, if you don't mind, what else are you that is positive, that helps you, that you want to be drawn toward? Instead of focusing on busy, what else are you? If I was answering for myself, I would say I'm learning. I'm in a season of learning for sure. And I do love that. Sure, it has its challenges, but look at these beautiful things. You are an encourager. You're tough. Oh, I love that. You're smart. You're optimistic. You're productive. You're successful, fulfilled, happy, grateful, a good friend. Keep them coming, a connector. These are beautiful. I would love for us together to collectively agree to change the culture, change the game. And what I mean by that is the next time someone does that off the cuff question that we all ask each other, how's it going? Or how are you? I will tell you, I've started to track, I won't bore you with the stats, but I've started to track how frequently people start with something about I'm so busy, and then they continue on. Can you change the game for the people in your circle? Can you say, oh, well, I'm really connecting these days, and let me tell you how. I'm a really good friend these days, and let me tell you how. I'm a dreamer these days, let me tell you how. I'm inspired these days, let me tell you how. If you do that, people are going to stop and take notice, and then you are going to influence them. When we influence people in a positive way, that helps us with our resilience too. We love that feeling, don't we? I know I love that feeling. There are some people I want to influence more than others, AKA the 16-year-old, but we want to keep trying to influence in the ways that we want to. So mindfulness. Imagine that you're swimming in this beautiful ocean. If you're afraid of sharks, don't think of sharks, but now that I've said sharks, you're thinking of sharks. I want us to think about mindfulness because that really ties into resilience and what we're talking about right now. In the end, I'm going to show you a slide with all the 10 different strategies that we're talking about. So I'll encourage you to take those notes or screenshot or get out your phone and take a picture. I was in Tucson, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, and I got to attend this workshop that was about self-compassion and the neuroscience of mindfulness. And Shauna Shapiro and Kristen Neff were talking about it is a combination of attention. But attention is not the only thing, because a sniper can have great attention, right? It is also about our intention, how we are wanting to show up, what's our reason, what's our motive, what's the feeling behind. And it's also about our attitude. In any given moment, can you stop and evaluate what's my attitude, what's my intention, and what's my intention, attention, and attitude? Because those three things matter. That is what mindfulness is. Anyone ever multitask? Jen Lawrence could teach you all about how multitasking, they say, is really a ton of microtasking, right? And that then we see our lives as blurry. One time, I don't know if this is science or not, but I was at this yoga retreat a couple of decades ago, and I remember a therapist who was also there, who he said, I work with people who are retirees, and many of them don't remember their lives. And that had me stop and take notice. Like, what do you mean? And he said, my theory on this is that they were always too busy to be present and pay attention. That's why they don't remember their lives. And I have remembered that for decades now. So I want us to think about how important it is to be mindful. Harvard says that 47% of the time our mind wanders. So if any of you are like, oh, my mind has already wandered, 47% of the time during this, that's okay, you're normal. But what about the other percentage? How can we focus during that time? So I'm going to ask for you to put into the chat, what is your intention right in this moment for the next half an hour? What's your intention? How do you want to show up in the world? Who do you want to be? That is something you have absolute power over and that you are in charge of. We are not in charge of everything in our lives, but we are in charge of this, how we want to show up. Oh, I love that one. Slowing down. Kara, I think we are soul sisters. That is consistently mine. Being focused, slowing down and making time for myself, being hopeful and empowered. Those are beautiful. When we speak to each other like that, it also helps with resilience, right? Have you ever done wound bonding with a friend? You know what I mean by that? You get together and you have those certain relationships where all you talk about is what's wrong, what's not working, how your body aches, how your relationship's suffering, how work sucks, how your boss is a monster. Maybe not, but you get the drift. We tend to then create a relationship where that's what we talk about. Can you create relationships where you talk about, this is how I want to show up, this is who I want to be, these are my successes, this is what I am other than just busy? So these three things are closely tied with each other: joy, stress, and mindfulness. And let's talk about those for a moment. Brene Brown says that joy is our most vulnerable emotion. Think about that for a moment. When we're so happy, we're so delighted, however you define joy, we have this fear that the other shoe is going to drop, right? I don't want to stay here too long because something's bound to go wrong. So can we, the next time you're feeling joy, just love it, just live in it and embrace it. This is something I encourage you to write down. This has also really stuck with me. They say that in any given day, we have between 50 and 70,000 thoughts. In one day. In this 5-second pause, you've probably had 10. Right? And it might be about the words I'm saying. It might be connecting to some experience in your life. You might be feeling the temperature in your room. You might be feeling the feet on the floor, right? There's so many different options, but it is also said that 95% of them are the same top 10 tunes. Think about that. It's a tape. Or do we see a CD or an MP4 or right playing over and over and over the same things? Can we start to shift that to have less stress, to have more mindfulness? When, I live in Flagstaff and we've got a lot of trails around here. And I think about the well-worn trails that lots of people have been on, and then the ones that you can barely define. For some of us, we go down the stress path a lot, right? Like, this is a well-worn neural pathway in my brain. I know how to do stress. This is what happens for me when these certain things go on. Can we start to make that barely worn other path that's more about joy, more about mindfulness, more of the path that we take? So I'm going to ask for you again to put some, my feet are cold. Oh, that's funny. To put into the chat the answer to this assessment. So they say I'm going to tell you what the American statistic is in a moment, that people in this country feel stressed sometimes. Did you know that? Just kidding. So the question is for you. What % of the day do you feel stressed? There is not like a rubric where you need to figure out the metrics. I'm just asking you, is it a little, is it medium, or is it a lot? Will you put that? A little, medium, or a lot? Oh, fascinating. The acupuncturist said cold extremities are sometimes due to overthinking. Okay, good. I see a lot of different stuff coming in. It's good. Good thinking about this. Sometimes putting the pause button on, like we are doing right now, is one of the most important things. If we were going to go on and talk about emotional intelligence, we know that the first step of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. So to stop and say, wow, a lot of my day I'm stressed, or medium, or none, or whatever, is a really important step. They say that more than half of Americans, more than half, fall into the 67 to 100%. Think about that, more than half. And it is not, let's like really have an aha moment for a moment. It's not because of the external stressors. It is because it's a way of being. Do you agree with that? It's not because of the external stressors. So I want to share with you this incredible statistic. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment again. And it is this. So first of all, have any of you ever won the lottery? I wish I could raise my hand. Have any of you ever become paraplegic? So those are two far extremes, right? They've done studies about people's happiness when those things happen, and it takes a great dip, right? It takes a great dip. But 1 year later, what do you think they found? Put it into the chat. When they go and look at those people who won the lottery, when they look at those people who have become paraplegic, what's going on? That's interesting. Lottery winners are more stressed and less happy. Kind of, yes. I mean, yes, and they are the same. They are back to exactly how they were a year before they won the lottery or a year before they were paraplegic. Think about that for a moment. In terms of external experiences, it's not about the external stuff. It is about the inside job. It's about what we say to ourselves on the inside. So I'm going to ask for you to go to the horror floor for a moment with me. This doesn't look like the horror floor, does it? This is a group I was working with at Northern Arizona University, and I just love how happy each of them look right there. I'm going to ask for you to list in the chat and then copy into your own notes all of the stressors you can think about right now. Brain dumping, you're familiar with that, right? I want you to list all the stressors you can right now. Anything that crosses your mind, make a giant old list. If you get 500 things, great. It just means you have self-awareness. It doesn't mean you're a hot mess. I want you to think about what gives you stress right now. I already mentioned to you my 16-year-old. What else comes to you? Put them in the chat. Imagine if you were to write them that they could just magically disappear like that. So get them written down. These are great. Keep them coming. Great in that they're honest, they're real, and I bet many of us can connect with these. I'm going to start reading what I see right here. Work, holidays, health, missing out on connections with friends and family. Thank you. Meal prepping, family and friends, client time management, bad roads, grocery shopping, running the studio, taking care of my dog and cat, having time for my mom, paying the bills, etc., etc. Thank you. Kids, school, kids' health, money, time. Thank you. Health, 15 years of virtual learning and no sports. 15-year-old, oh, got it. Of virtual learning and no sports. Upcoming holidays, unable to see family, housekeeping, and laundry piles. Thank you. Schoolwork, procrastination, dreaming of home renovations, dog training, my grandparents' health, my parents' relationship, my lack of friendship, not being a mom yet. Thank you. Kids, this summit, contracts, business development, relationships, health. Thank you. Finances, grandkids in a virtual learning, not enough time in a day for work. Look at that. When you see that list, how do you feel? Can you put it into a word, one word? How do you feel? And put it into the chat. When you see, yes, when you see everybody sharing those, how does it make you feel? It might be a broad range, right? One, connected, I'm not alone. Oh, that word came in right at the exact same time. Two, overwhelmed, like there's a lot of stuff to be worried about. Two, it's kind of silly for worrying so much. I love that. Can we get to the place of once now that it's out on paper and we see it all, is there a way we can make choices? When we shine the flashlight on the thing that scares us, the thing that worries us, sometimes it doesn't seem as scary. Of course, we don't want to live on this horror floor. That's why I'm calling it a horror floor, right? But we want to acknowledge and move on instead of letting it just swim around in the back of our heads all the time. And we're all having our stuff that we manage. I love seeing that too. Look, we're in a virtual environment and you probably could feel more connected to some of these people because of the depth of which people are sharing and willing to share than we do with some other people in our lives. So the happiness set point is what I was talking about before with the example of the lottery and paraplegic. So I want you to think about, where is my happiness set point? And can I adjust it? What they say is that it's not about the external things. I'll keep repeating that, right? It's about the inside job. It's the inside. You've met folks who are like Eeyore, right? At times you have been like Eeyore. Can you flip the script? Can you work on resilience? Can you work on the neural pathway that you're following that's more perhaps about gratitude than about stress and worry? How can we adjust your happiness set point? It's also about the intention, attitude, and attention. So now I want us to get specific, right? Because we're talking about practical. Can you think of one goal in your life that you have that's currently not thriving? You might not have created it as a goal, like written it out and done smart goals about it, but I want you to think about one thing that you have perhaps as a goal that's not so thriving. And I'll give you some examples and then put it in the chat if you don't mind. Perfect. Keep them coming. Might be about family, might be about health. It might be about playing an instrument. It might be about applying for jobs. It might be about our own organization. It might be about our own attitude. It might be about our own productivity. It might be about staying in touch with people. Anything, put it in. We know that New Year's resolutions is a thing people do, right? And in January, apparently 35% of Americans set New Year's resolutions, but by February, 80% of them are dead. The resolutions, not the people. So it's interesting just thinking about goal setting. Sometimes we have non-thriving goals, and it's great for us to talk about. What I see here is getting back into running, weight loss, fitness, physical activity, job search, exercising, time for my husband, walking my dogs, travel, relationships with others. Thank you for sharing those, right? Because we're not all perfect all the time. So now let's examine how you feel. Can you, in a word, put one word into how you feel about that not thriving goal? Get really in touch with your feelings. How do you feel when you think about that goal that's not thriving? Excellent sharing these feelings. These are not positive, are they? Right? Neglectful, lazy, guilty, a bunch of guilty. So the first thing we want to do is recognize this, because there's an expression that do you know that they say rhyming expressions we think are more believable? Well, this is a rhyming one. I think they're at least more memorable, right? But you must feel it to heal it. You must feel it to heal it. How do I feel? I feel like a failure. Thank you for sharing those, right? So now we want to examine a little bit further. I promise we're going to come off of the horror floor. I want you to examine why it's a non-thriving goal. Is it about, here as it says, passion and perseverance? Another way to say that is motivation or ability. My favorite way to say all of that is the motivation and ability part is it skill or is it will? Is it, I don't know how to do that thing well? That might absolutely be the answer. I don't have mentors. I'm not sure. I haven't done this before. Or is it about will, which is motivation? If I go back to thinking about my 16-year-old who does not love online school, my first immediate response is, oh, it's for sure about will. And then I stop and think a little bit deeper. Is that the only thing? I think it might be also because skill with learning in an online environment. It's new. It's not as engaging for him. So it might be about both. Would you put it in the chat in terms of your goal? Is it about skill or will? And somebody said, definitely will for me. I know I can do it, but I don't want to find the time right now. Oh, and I love that too. It's about consciously making choices. Before you've heard about in terms of your email, am I going to do it, delegate it, or delete it? It's about making decisions. So this is saying, do I want to put it on my priority list right now or not? David Allen, who's a time management guru, he says you can create a someday maybe list, which I love that concept. So you don't lose it, but you don't put it on your to-do list for this week and just feel like a failure because you didn't do it. So these are things for us to think about. Now it's goal setting time. You ready? I want you to choose one that speaks to you, that is empowering to you, feels like I want to put energy into this. any goal that you feel like I could put a little more energy into, I could use a little more resilience with this. And would you mind just putting the word into the chat? It might even be about dog walking. It might be about managing your email inbox. It might be about having better self-care. Doesn't matter. Any goal that comes to you that maybe has been swimming around in your brain. And I want you to hear this. They say that only 3% of Americans have written down goals. So look at you. You're like way ahead of 97% of the folks out there. So you're writing them down. These are great. Seeing them coming in, getting moving, having a better diet, having less junk, managing my time that doesn't stress me out, meditation. These are wonderful. Only 1% of Americans actually review and rewrite their goals on a daily basis. So think about that. If you want to be in the top 1%, just rewrite. Keep priority for that goal. So they say that grit is both a trait and a state. Right? It's a trait and a state. You might think, oh, I know people who are born with natural resilience. You might think, I know people who have worked so hard at their resilience. Nature or nurture, who knows, right? It's both a trait and it's a state. It's both cognitive and behavioral and emotional. It's all wrapped up. So first step, you ready for the first step moving forward with that goal? John Kabat-Zinn, you may have heard of him. Someone mentioned meditation, is the #1 predictor of success of reaching our goal. You ready? It's here, is the belief that we can do it. So stop and take inventory. Do you have belief that you can do it? Is there a way that even today, after this, you can, for 30 seconds, shut everything down except for your mind and imagine a positive outcome? So back a couple of decades ago, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I went to undergrad at Ohio University. When I was there, I got to be the president of the rock climbing club. So my first job then, when I was 21 or 22, was going out to the mountains of Southern California, the San Jacinto Mountains, and teaching rock climbing to 5,000 fifth graders a year out on the granite. And I loved that job. And I got to study psychology, right? Human behavior. Most kids, I would say 97% of the kids that were there had never been rock climbing before. And what they said to themselves is that at the bottom of the rock mattered so much, right? Was it, I'm never going to be able to do this, or this looks hard, but I'm going to try and I think I can. So what are you saying to yourself about the goals? Sure, it's helpful if other people are supportive. I've talked to multiple people who have said, I told my family members about this new business I want to create it, and they smacked the idea down and it absolutely deflated me. That is hard. But what we say to ourselves matters the most. As we're thinking about that, we can put goals into different categories, can't we? Right? What's in my control? What's absolutely in my control, like our intention, right? And what is within my influence? This is good for us to get clear. If you would like homework, because some of you I know are like, I want to keep going with stuff, I would encourage you to make these 2 lists. It's funny, I keep talking about my son today. If he only knew I was talking about him. But I think I would love for how he is and how he shows up in life to be within my control. It is not. It's within my influence, but I don't get to choose what he picks up or doesn't pick up in terms of influence. You know what I mean? We sometimes influence people when we don't intend to, and we just want to be invisible. Or we sometimes desperately want to influence. I know I've talked with, for some reason, it seems to be older men who have adult children now, and they say, I just want to pour everything that I know into them. I want them to sit and listen and learn from my wisdom. How can I do that? And so we have good conversations about just making them sit there and listen and change isn't going to work. So a couple more things. I want you to think about how you can maximize joy. So The Call to Courage is a Netflix show that Brene Brown, the top picture, has done. I encourage you watching that. Tidying Up is a Netflix series that Marie Kondo down below has put out. And we talked about joy earlier. And Marie Kondo talks about Does this spark joy? That's her thing. In life, can you keep going minute by minute? Does this spark joy? So should I do it or not? And operate with that. Now, sometimes things, we don't have that option, right? You think, does this spark joy? Not at all, but you still have to do it. For me, that's photocopying. So when I get to the photocopy machine, I try to flip the script and I ask this adaptation, what about this sparks joy? And I think, well, it gives me a pause in my day. It makes me stop frothing at the mouth in front of the computer or being in front of a group and pause with this machine right here. Or it helps the people that I'm teaching to learn a little bit better, I think, because there's a visual in front of them. So can you ask yourself this question, what about this sparks joy? So almost to the end now. For those of you who love math, get ready to geek out with me, because here we go. S equals P times R. Suffering equals pain times resistance. So think about this with me for a minute. Pain. A pain for me is being in a grocery line behind someone who is very slow and there are not enough cashiers. For you, it might be traffic. For you, it might be much more serious, like the loss of a loved one. Times resistance. So if I'm resisting, if I'm fed up, if I'm angry, if I'm annoyed, if I'm rolling my eyes, my resistance is also high. But if I have my resistance at a 0, so let's say my pain is at 99 out of 100, right? Times resistance. If resistance is at a 0, what's the number for suffering? Can anyone do the math? Put it into the chat. I'll help you. Then it's also 0, right? If we have no resistance. Think about that. We're going to be presented with things that give us pain. So in a moment, can you notice it, or do you get wrapped up in the feeling of it and have resistance? I think this is such a helpful, simple mathematical equation to emotions that can really be helpful for all of us. The last strategy, you ready? This is about gratitude and service. The person whose name that you put into the chat earlier, I'm going to strongly encourage you to go find them today or tomorrow and tell them. Of all the people in my life who I thought of being successful, I thought of you, and let me tell you why. That compliment will stay with them for the rest of their lives. Go ahead and do it once a day. Think about 5 different people today, right? Don't stop. How can you have gratitude for people, things, experiences in your life? And how can you serve? Not when you're overwhelmed and then serving others, but even in a mindset, right? Of giving your appreciation away. So with that, let's take a look at this. This is it. This is everything all together, the 10 strategies. I'm going to ask you to look through these, and would you put into the chat one number? Which of these are you going to highlight in your life? Which of these is going to serve you the most? Which of these speaks to you the most right now? Great, keep them coming. I'm seeing 1, a couple of 7. Oh yeah, 7, good old 7. Oh, 1 and 7 are popular. I love these. 6, believing in yourself. Fantastic. Keep them coming. 3, the mindfulness piece. Great. So you got your picture of this. You've got this. You've got these. Good old number 7 makes me chuckle. That's funny. Me too. So I want to ask you this question as we are wrapping things up. Will you put this into the chat? Who could use more support in their lives? I'm just asking this generically in terms of you being your best self. Who could use more support in terms of living your best life, of feeling successful, feeling happy, feeling not overwhelmed? If that is you, I'm going to encourage you to get the support however you can, wherever you can, or please feel free to reach out to me. This is how I work with groups. I work with groups all over the country right now, 97% of them through Zoom, whether it's team building or strategic planning or any of this stuff. What I'd like to offer to everybody on this call is, you see my email address. If you email me today, I'm going to give you a discount I'm going to give you a steep discount, a 35% off discount to a $297 online Women's Leadership Academy course, which teaches you, which gives you skills for the 13 strategies that my clients ask for most. If I would say that's the place to start, is start with that course. If you can move into coaching, I think is one of the most incredible life-changing experiences for anybody. If you need help with your team, reach out to me. But if you email me today, I'll email you back a code to have a deep discount on that course. I think that would be a benefit if you could use some support in your life. Also, you can find me in terms of social media. Here I am. I'm going to stop sharing in just a moment. Would you mind taking a moment putting into the chat, what's your biggest takeaway or an action step you're going to do based on everything we've just been talking about today? This is for you. This is for you to stop and think, what am I going to take away? So that this today could have been about transformation instead of just something else happening in my life, right? So what is a takeaway for you, or an action step you might take? It might be something that I specifically said, that you saw, that you thought of, that you were inspired to do based on what someone else wrote. Keep them coming. Someone says, I'm going to start a gratitude practice. How beautiful is that? Thank you. That's inspiring. That might make each one of us be like, oh, how's my gratitude practice? I'm going to write down my goals and put them into action. Fantastic. Sometimes it's as simple as just scribbling it out, right? I'm going to remember that we're more in control than we think in terms of happiness set point. Love that. Is it about skill or will? That's a great filter to use. Wonderful. Remember what I can and cannot control and write it down if I need to. Fantastic. I'm delighted to be with all of you today. We are wrapping this up right now. Mwah! You are a joy. I'm so glad you are here. If you wouldn't mind, as we are bowing out, will you unmute, say your goodbyes to this wonderful community, and we'll see you on the flip side. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. See you in Nicole's session.
Bye.